Aussie creation video. It's been a while again, I know. I've had a huge project that I've been working on for the last 6 months, which I'll talk more about later, but I have also been doing a little bit on this motor. Now I call this motor the engine of legends. I have a lot of respect for the people in the industry that have been working with these 6 cylinders for years and years, and I've just tapped into a bit of that technology, a bit of that knowledge, and it is the engine of legends. There's some people that have been working with these motors for years. I got the bug, and this one is the end of a lot of learning and a lot of adoption of other smart people. To start with, this engine, this block, or this engine complete was in the UC Tirana. If you watched all my other videos, the UC Tirana I bought off Kurt Evans, this is the motor that was in it, and he bought this motor and put it into the car and gave me the original 173 with it when I bought the car. So this is the original block that Kurt bought, and it's come a long way since then. It all started because of Shane Barnett, really. Shane Barnett, Barnett Performance Engineering. I saw a little ad on Facebook, and he was developing the supercharger kits, which inspired me. It just looked great. I'm a technologist, and I love the technology that it was actually running a supercharger. It was running wasted spark and, you know, a trigger wheel and all of those types of things, which are just not common on the old Holden 6s. So Shane was really a big driver in the start of this sort of passion of mine with Holden 6 cylinders, and it'll go back on to this engine. Even though it's probably a little bit small for the engine that I've built, I like it because it's Shane's. And there was only, I'd say, half a dozen of those kits ever built. Mine is the second last one. It was the last for a while, but he built another one for a good mate of his, Brett Bresnan, who was also a legend in the industry. I've got parts on this engine from Brett's original business, Sonic Injection. So it's running the Sonic Injection girdle in it, and a few little bits and pieces that Shane used to buy to make that kit go together. So there's a couple of legends already. The reason this engine was missing for so long, that it was down with an engine builder in my local town, who is a local legend. He's done all the machining on this engine. I did have it down there for him to build, and I was in no real hurry, and it sat for a long time. And he's generating income out of a lot of diesel engines, and I didn't push him, and it just got to that point I just wanted to do it myself, so I went and picked it up off him. But he's done all the machining on this engine, so you see a few marks in some videos, little indicator marks where he had it set up on surfacing machines. But Dave did the engine machining on this, boring it, surfacing it. He ripped the head apart for me, pulled it apart, and was going to do the machining on it. He bought the stainless steel valves, so there's a head over here I'll have a bit of a talk about later, but he bought the big stainless steel valves that we were going to put into it. So Dave is an absolute legend, and I'm glad he's had his hand on this motor. Just another legend in the industry. There's a lot of fellas around my town that have had engines built by Dave. And then we move on to the head. Like this head over here, which I'll show you and have a bit of a look at in a second, is originally bought as the aluminium Yellow Terror head, and it was a good head. It was basic though, even though they were a good development off the original cast iron head. It's a 12 port head. It was a good development. But when I ran it on the 173 with the supercharger, but then I sent it back down to 2 other legends, the boys down at HSD, Eddie and Adam, his son, and I've dealt a little bit with Eddie, but I've mostly dealt with Adam, and just a phenomenal business. Those guys are just brilliant. What they don't know about heads and flowing and getting to run with these 6 cylinders. They do a lot of other heads other than the Holden 6s, but Adam has been just brilliant to deal with, and he's an open invitation to ask him questions and get more information as I build this engine and put it back together. Every time I put a video out on where I was up to, Adam would be on to me about doing stuff, you know, and moving things forward. Adam got these, I haven't showed you these yet, but the link bar lifters, which are LS style lifters. He got me them. Took a long while to get them, but he got me them, and they're the latest thing I just got. But this cam also, which is a roller cam, and if you remember the 173, I ended up doing a cam in that motor. I got it running, and we had it on a dyno, and it was running nicely, but if you remember back on that video, if you look back in the past videos, it had a tick in it. And you know, these things have oil pressure issues, and one of the lifters had worn the lobe on the cam, and that got me thinking about running a roller cam in it, and that led me down the track. This is another legend. I really don't know whether he's still alive, but I went down to near the Central Coast, and it was a company called Shore Cams. And he had a lot to do with cams in this country for engines. He was up at the top of the cam development industry in Australia. But when I found him, he was working out of a backyard shed. And I talked to him about the motor, sent him all the specs, that I was running a supercharger, things like that. And he developed the cam for me. And you'll see in this video some of the cam data. So roller cam, link bar lifters, Yellow Terror, head modified by Adam and Eddie down there at HSD Development, and the Shane Barnett SBR, not SBR, it was Barnett Performance Engineering. And you'll see a few of his stuff, his things out there. Shane's a pretty quiet type of bloke. Please don't hassle him out. I don't think he's building these anymore. He does a lot of development for himself. But that's been the development of this motor, and that's why I call it the engine of legends. It's really important to me, this motor. It'll go in Tirana that's sitting just behind me there, but I'll get it running outside of that. And this engine itself is a living entity to me. It doesn't matter about the car that it goes in. It's what this engine means to me over years of YouTube, and really the Holden 6-cylinder was the start of my YouTube channel, and it's been my greatest viewing of videos is on Holden 6-cylinders. There's a lot of people out there still like them, so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at, guys, and I am still building this, and it's going to go together. I'm heading off for a holiday for 4 or 5 weeks, so I thought I should get a video out on where I'm up to and all the processes I'm going to with this motor. So we'll get back into it. And thanks for your dedication, thanks for watching, thanks for being patient, and let's start moving forward. Cheers. So I'm back to doing this valves again, so we have to ease out where the valves come out to be able to get your full lift, so you're not hitting the bores at all. And you can see what all I've done basically is get the gasket, sit it on top, traced around where the valve allowances are on the gasket, and I'm just grinding it out to that sort of area. I'm just doing a rough grind at the moment. The main thing is to consider is the distance from your top ring, from the top of your top ring, to where you grind down to here, that you don't go anywhere near below the top of that top ring to keep your compression in there. But yeah, we're just easing them out for the valves, and so I can get the right drop on the valves, and then we're ready to start moving forward. Rightio, as you can see in the grinding process, I basically, it only takes 30 seconds, but into it and get the meat out of there on the right angle. If you start working too far up on the sides too early, you'll sure as take way too much out of there. So hook into it in the main meaty area, that's what I've been doing, and then slowly start to blend it in at the end. And again, each of these cylinders has taken me about maybe a minute at the most. And I'll probably go over them with a finer buff wheel. Not that it's probably necessary, just to tidy them up. And then I've got to put the head on and check the valve drop. So here I've finished all of those reliefs, inlet and exhaust, and I've just stuck the gasket back on it, just trying to get the light right. And you can see where those little reliefs are in association with the gasket all the way down. So now I've just got to do put the head on and work out what the drop should be on the valves. I don't really know that at this stage either, but just to make sure I've got clearance on the sides of the bores with the big valves, and then I'm good to go. I've just been finishing off the eyebrowing in the cylinders to give clearance on those valves on the deck of the block. Had to do a few things so I didn't get confused on the way through, identifying the exhaust and intake along the way, and it basically goes in a nice little pattern. Starts with exhaust, then 2 inlets, 2 exhaust, 2 inlets, 2 exhaust, 2 inlets, and the final exhaust up the other end. And the exhaust wasn't, all the exhausts had heaps of clearance, but I've still done a bit of eyebrowing there just to allow the gases to escape a bit easier, even though they're under pressure. It's not really an issue on the exhaust valves, they're a bit smaller. But I stuck with that head gasket pattern and gave them all a bit of an eyebrow. And I'll show you the numbers that I came up with. These are this is my cam data here. And as you can see there, the underlying number on the inlet for the peak valve lift is 557 thou, and down here for the exhaust the peak lift is 553 thou, and then I've just worked those out for exhaust and inlet, basically 14.06 mil for the exhaust and 14.15 mil for the inlet. And then I just started with the gasket out. You can see 3 sets of numbers there, so I gave it the first go, and then the second time through I just measured the inlet, and the third time through I went inlet and exhaust again in the red numbers, and then I put the gasket back in. So I got them all with clearance with the gasket out, and then obviously the gasket's going to give me a bit more clearance, and the numbers came a lot cleaner, fair bit closer. I'm happy with them anyway. So around the 16s, 16.5 on all of the inlets, where I only needed about 14, so I got heaps there, and the exhaust had heaps anyway. They're up in the 20s. They don't really touch the deck at all. So that's been the process to get those big valves clearing on the bore and get it ready to put back together. With those eyebrows all done, and knowing I've got enough clearance for the valves so they don't hit that deck is a big thing. It also is going to help the flow of the atomized fuel coming into the cylinder, just not hitting that ledge on the way in. So main reason I pulled this apart, because it pretty much was assembled all the bottom end. was to do those eyebrows and then clean the block out again and reassemble it. So this afternoon I've basically been cleaning all the parts and getting them ready to put in. I've used a heap of assembly goo with it. I'll show you that in a second. Got that all over the journals and on the caps and had them all clean and slipped that crank in there. And I haven't torqued it all up yet. It's just sitting there at this stage. But as you can see, it's running sonic injection. That's Brett Bresnan's old business girdle. There is now another alternative, which I probably would have gone with if I wasn't this far down this track. But Swan Racing Development also do a now billet aluminium whole plate for the bottom of these engines, which stiffens them up. Very, very nice. So if I built another motor, I'd probably use one of those, but this will suffice for this motor. As you can see down there, it's running all ARP, studs and nuts and washers and things like that. So doing as much as I can to strengthen that bottom end, or just make it rigid so you don't get too much vibration. There shouldn't be, as all of the internals have been balanced. So we'll see how we go. That's it, getting it all together. It's good to have these parts going back in and the table not looking so full of bits and pieces. Happy with the progress so far, and I'll get this torqued down, and then I've got to dress the head up now that I can put those valves in and set the valve springs up, etc. I'm back to where I was a couple of months ago, before I sent the head down to Adam. I had started doing the ring gapping, and I did the first 4 pistons, and I had those pistons in because the crank was already in it. But then Adam said we needed to do the eyebrowing for those big valves, so I stripped it all apart. Done that eyebrowing now, and slipping the pistons back in that I'd already completed. And yeah, so that's where I'm back to. It's been a couple of months, and really only a couple of hours work to get back to here. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I've got to do some ring gapping on the last 2 pistons, and I'll set up to do that now and get those rings set up, and I'll give you some data on what I've done with the ring gaps, and get those last 2 pistons in, and then it's up to dressing the head up, getting the valves in, getting the springs on, getting the retainers on, and we're moving pretty quick. Loving this engine, looking forward to actually starting it up. It's been a long process. I'm just doing some ring gapping, and I'm just doing the second ring at the moment, and I'm doubling basically what I'm getting on the top ring. And on these pistons, it's 4 thou for every inch of bore, and for blown application you're adding another 4 thou. So I'm coming up to around the 20 thou on the top ring, and then on the second and the top of the oil rings I'm doubling that to give it plenty of clearance, and that's recommended, and I've talked to a few people about it. So this ring here at the moment has got next to no clearance, and the top ring that I just did, I'll show you that, it was actually interference when I set it up in the bore. So I'm just sitting it down in the bore, measuring around it, getting it parallel to the top face, and then using a feeler gauge. So here's my instructions for the end gap, as you can see up the top, and its example is pretty much this engine, and you can see at the very bottom it's saying 19 thou total end gap for that top ring. So then I'm going, I'm going a little bit more than that just for security, and then the next ring down, and the top oil ring, I'm doubling it. So this is the second ring, and you can see the difference from when I started to when I finished. And here's the top ring. You see the gaps. Well, it's half of what the second ring is, and that's about 22 thou. Here's the first oil ring. And as you can see, it's basically no gap at all, which is danger zone if you put these in without doing the ring gapping. Again, there's the top oil ring. It only took a couple of goes on the wheel, and it's all done. Here she is, people. Turns over quite nicely, which is a nice feeling after putting all those pistons and bearings in, that it actually turns with minimal effort. Means that so far I've done a pretty good job. One more little movement, just lovely. So that's all of those Ross Racing pistons. I think they're Hastings bearings. I think they're pretty standard these days. And the spool H-beam rods with the ARP studs in them. And you can see there's that crank girdle. As I said before, there's a new version of this, which I would have used if I hadn't been this far down the engine, built by Swanee Racing. He was a legend that I didn't mention, but Swan Racing Development now does billet aluminium crank girdle, which is friggin' awesome. But this is where I'm staying at this stage with this build, and she is finally back together with all of the pistons in there, all the eyebrowing done, and all the ring gapping done. It's a fair process to get a boosted motor up to this stage, or any motor up to this stage. Getting all of those pistons in, getting it all assembled. Fortunately, the gudgeons were all on. I didn't have to do that part, but very happy with that process, that stage, and that area of completion. Woo! Here's my original Yellow Terror head that has been reworked by Adam down at HSD Development. It's Head Stud Development in Victoria, and has done a champion job. Now this head is super expensive. I think I originally bought the head for $5,500 off Yellow Terror. Forget what it costs through Adam to have all of the porting done and chamber volumes sorted. Couple of grand, $2,500, something like that. Then we've got the Beehive springs, which would have been over $1,000. And then you got the roller rockers, which would have been, $1,000, $1,500. So the numbers just start adding up big time when you're getting up into this level of head. If I built another 202, I'd love to go with the Dugan, the old Dugan head that they also developed down there. But this has got a fair bit of money into it, so this is the one that will go back on this motor, and I'll show you the chambers. So all of these chambers have been machined out to make them all equal in volume, and I think we've gone for around the 9.5 to 1. I'd have to check those numbers, but I've also done some eyebrowing since then, so it will reduce the compression ratio. Those eyebrows, anything you take out of the cylinders, is definitely going to decrease that compression ratio, but that's all good. I'm happy with that. I'm not after the ultimate horsepower machine. I'm just after a really nice streetable supercharged engine. I'm definitely not a hoon. You know, I'm a hoon by nature, but I am also an engineer. Spent 20 years in engineering. Started out as a fitter and turner, and I know things break, and I just don't like breaking things. I've built this more for the creation than for the acceleration, I suppose, but I know I'm going to enjoy that acceleration. So very nice little head. Should work really well on the engine. And I'll show you and tell you a bit more about these valve springs. So again, on my cam data sheet, down here in the bottom, it tells you all about the cam, but it tells you about what springs to run, etc., and the install height for those springs. And it's suggested there, pack beehive springs, and that's what I've used. So these are the same sort of springs that are in the LS engines, and I really like them. Most of the Holden 202 builds run the double valve springs. So again, I just like doing things different, and this was one of the hold-ups with this cylinder head, and where HSD came into their own, because they actually had a head down there cut apart, and they could see how much they could machine out of the spring seats. Because we got that install height, we needed to machine or counterbore the spring seats down to get that install height. And because they had a head cut apart, they knew exactly how far they could go down. And they've set this up to the specs of my cam sheet, and it's all good to go. So that's where the head's at. So there you go, guys. That's where the engine of Legends is up to. I've still got a fair way to go. Super good to have those pistons back in with all that work done to the cylinder, to each of the cylinders. And I've still got a lot of parts sitting on that bench that I need to fit up. So this video is a little bit longer than I normally do, and I'm probably going to now do longer videos with more content, but less of them. You know, there's a fair library of videos. I think I've got now about 170 videos in the library, documenting all of the things I've done in the shed and my progress of learning. And as I used to say, and I haven't said for a while, I'm not a professional. No way. I'm a fitter by trade. I understand a fair bit about tooling and processes of engineering, but you know, when you start working on these things, they're a whole new ball game, and you can use some of those skills, but drawing off the knowledge of those legends has been brilliant. And I haven't done everything that everyone's suggested. This is just my build, my interpretation of a Holden 6 with a little bit of flair. Anyway, guys, I'll keep building it up, and I'll keep you up to date of how it's going. And thanks again for watching. Thanks again for your patience. And I really appreciate you watching and liking my videos. And I love the comments. I'm always happy to learn. Take care. Bye for now.